Welcome back to the I Am Passionate podcast. It's your host, Jaren. I hope you all are doing well. And so we have a lot of football news to talk about today because a lot of free agent, like signings, trades have happened. And so gave yourself some time just because I'm not the type just yet to the moment someone is traded or, a big free agent signing to post about it immediately. But that is the goal for, the future. That quite literally is the goal. And so for this particular episode, we're just going to kind of recap all of the, you know, big signings, that, I kept track of and, that I did research on. And so, yes, there's going to be a few that I missed. But the goal is to just talk about as many of the big signings as possible. Maybe talk about a couple of the winners of free agency at this point, maybe a few of the losers, and kind of just see how, these things are kind of looking before the draft, because the draft, I believe, is coming up in April. The draft usually happens in April. And so we're kind of just going to go kind of team by team. Some players, I'm going to mention their contracts. Others, I'm not. But I'm going to start with what I think is the bigger news, even though that, in my opinion, is kind of a double-edged sword. The day of this recording, it is March 18th, 1:09 p.m. The Bengals have re-signed Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Jamar Chase for 4 years, $161 million, and T. Higgins for 4 years, $115 million. I really did not think they were going to get the T. Higgins deal done, just because, how the Bengals had franchise tagged him basically twice. I believe they franchise tagged him going into this offseason. I'm not 100% sure. But I really, really thought they were going to have to find a trade partner for him. But, the reason I think it's a double-edged sword is just because, yes, you're going to have an amazing offense. They had an amazing offense last season. Joe Burrow put up MVP type numbers, but the problem is they couldn't stop a nosebleed. It's easy for me to bring up the Ravens, where I can make the argument that the Bengals should have beaten the Ravens both times. The Bengals defense just could not stop the Ravens in those two games. Now, don't get me wrong, the Ravens offense did what they needed to do to get back into the game, but regardless, the Bengals defense last year was just bad. If they had even a middle of the pack defense, they would have been a playoff team for sure. So, I had saw kind of over social media that between Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, they take up 44% of their team's salary cap. 44%. Hey, I'm all for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins getting their bag because they deserve it. Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. T. Higgins would basically be a number one wide receiver on pretty much every team except for maybe like 3 or 4, give or take. So both are really, really good players, and they deserve it. But I think they have to get lucky on some of their draft picks. I think they have to draft just straight defense, because hopefully they get lucky on a couple of players, because if they just rely on free agency, I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to pretty much have the same type of season where Joe Burrow is going to have to play perfect pretty much every game. But, against some teams, it's just impossible to play perfect because somebody's going to make a mistake. Somebody's going to miss a block. Maybe a pass is just a tad too high. Bad bounce, interception for the defense. That type of thing. So I'm hoping, even though that the Bengals are a divisional rival, I'm hoping that, they get the defense built back up. And I had texted my brother when they had resigned basically both. It was official. That I was like, dang, like I'm going to have to go through watching stressful Ravens versus Bengals games for another 4 years. That's just insane. And so the next team I'm going to talk about, Kevin's going to be happy I talk about them, is the Bears. The Bears traded for Rams lineman Jonah Jackson, and they traded for Chiefs guard Joe Thuney. So their interior line is pretty good. Their tackles are not bad, but they're not as good as their interior O-line. So, maybe they figure something out there. Maybe the two tackles they have now, I mixed them up, so I'm not even going to refer to them by name, but you can easily just look it up. Because one of them is Darnell Wright. The other one, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I should have wrote that down. Darnell Wright, and there's another one. They're about the same age. They got into the league at the same time. Maybe right now as we speak, they're training, getting ready for the season, because the Bears, they've had a good offseason. They also have signed Grady Jarrett from the Falcons, who was a Pro Bowl defensive lineman. Great. 3 years, 43.5 mil. I don't know the guaranteed money. That's just the total money of the contract. And they signed one of the best free agent centers, Drew Dalman, for 3 years, 42 mil, both from the Falcons. The Bears, they're doing what they need to in, you know, getting the O line to protect Caleb Williams, because Caleb Williams showed a lot of flashes this past season, and he showed a lot of those flashes with a bad O line. And I feel like, hey, if they get him that O line, they can compete. I do think they need to, draft a couple of pieces. Maybe at least 1 to 2 O linemen. You might not have to spend your first round pick on an lineman if you're Chicago. It would not hurt. I know the Bears have been linked to Ashton Genty, so I'm wondering if you're the GM for Chicago, if you're just he's too big of a name to pass up. So, we will see. We will see what the Bears decide to do. Let me know, for your favorite team, who you hope they draft versus or who you think they might actually draft. And so, going to the Cardinals, they signed, I believe he played for the Eagles this past season, Josh Sweat for 4 years, $76.4 million. Great signing. He's a great pass rusher. They also signed defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson for 2 years, 29 mil. Not too bad, not too bad, because their offense with Kyler Murray this past year did look pretty good. They kind of had their ups and downs in their season. Like early, they were kind of looking like maybe they'll sneak into the playoffs, but then they just kind of ran out of gas when it was approaching the finish line. So we will kind of see, what they do personally, and we're gonna move on to the Falcons, which their major signing would just be Leonard Floyd. Um, yeah, we're still waiting on Kirk Cousins at the time of this recording. I believe they're trying to work out a deal because Kirk Cousins wants to start somewhere. And so essentially, the two quarterback needy teams, if they don't draft one, the biggest one being the Browns and the Giants, those two are the biggest ones to look for, because I believe Kirk Cousins can start on either one of those teams. But the thing is, I feel like the Browns would draft, or the Browns or Giants. I'm not 100% sure what the Giants pick, but I'm sure they would try to draft a quarterback with their early pick, because both do have early picks. And so Kirk Cousins would kind of be in a situation he was in this past year with the Falcons. You have a young guy, high draft pick waiting behind you. You slip up, you lose your job. So I think Kirk Cousins is still a good quarterback. It's just he's in that, kind of your leash is short just because we have the young guy waiting behind you. So if he doesn't ball out, we might not see too many more years of Kirk Cousins, which I think he's a great quarterback. Me personally, like he had a lot of great years on the Vikings. He had some great years on the Commanders. But we will see what that ends up to. And also, speaking of the Browns, they traded for Kenny Pickett. They re-signed Myles Garrett. He originally wanted to be on a contender, but he changed his mind. I've seen on social media that people were saying that he changed his mind to try to help recruit people to the Browns, which not a bad idea, because they still have a lot of that defense intact. They just, other than needing to be healthy, first off, they just need to figure out that quarterback situation. Because if you get the Kirk Cousins, if you get a rookie quarterback who pans out, kind of early, if they have that C.J. Stroud type rookie year, you can compete if you're the Browns. Which hey, for me as a Ravens fan, that's going to make those games stressful, but it is what it is. And they also signed, I'm going to mispronounce his name, but he played on the Bucks, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, just to a 1 year, about $5 million deal, which was a great pass rusher for the Buccaneers. And so, he's going to be lining up on the other side of Myles Garrett. And, teams, they're going to double team Myles Garrett, and which leaving Joe Tryon-Shoyinka one-on-one, we'll say 90% of the time. And so that's a pretty good deal. And also going back to the Bengals real quick, the two other signings, they signed B.J. Hill, which I believe he played for them before. Correct me if I'm wrong. And also they re-signed tight end Mike Gesicki, the gritty master himself, for 3 years, $25.5 million. Again, all good signings. I'm just hoping they spend some more money on that defense. So going to the Ravens, they re-signed left tackle Ronnie Stanley, which that made me really, really happy, just because, kind of shore that up, and they can kind of look for a left tackle in the future. They're not going to get the kid from LSU. I believe his name is Will Campbell. They're not going to get him. He's going to be, the Ravens would have to trade up to get him. But, hopefully, the Ravens can find that kind of, late round pick who turns out to be good, because Roger Rosengarten just turned it on last year at right tackle. So Ravens, I feel like over the last couple of years have been pretty good at drafting and developing offensive linemen. Patrick Ricard, huge signing because without him, the Ravens offense would still be good, but it would not be as good as it actually is because I mean he's 6'3", about 300 pounds. He's humongous, and he's blocking for the biggest running back in the NFL, and also one of the best running back rooms in the NFL. And by that I mean because Justice Hill is no slouch either. Keaton Mitchell, I know he wasn't 100% last year, but if he gets back to at least somewhat he was his rookie year, that dangerous. Tylan Wallace, who I'm hoping the Ravens give more time to because I feel like he's only been good, when he's had to step up. And the Ravens, I believe, in their office, I believe in 2023, that season where they made it to the AFC Championship, when they played the Rams, he had a punt return and he flipped into the end zone, and they put his picture on one of the offices because I believe what the Ravens do is they'll put dedicated rooms after iconic moments for like specific players, and so he's now got one of those moments, which I think is pretty cool because I believe if you're gonna have an iconic moment, like that's just pretty cool, regardless of the career that you have. And so also one of the bigger things, they signed DeAndre Hopkins for a 1 year $6 million deal, which is not bad. I mean, I would be more happy about this if this was a few years ago, even though that DeAndre Hopkins, he's still good. I I get he didn't have the best of seasons, but I mean he'll have a full off season with the Ravens, and they're not asking him to go catch 100 passes, 1,500 yards, and 15 touchdowns. I think if anything, he'll be a great weapon inside the red zone for Lamar Jackson, and even though he's a bit older now, he's still the F it, he's down there somewhere type of person where you can still throw it up to him because the Ravens, they have that threat from like the hash marks, like in between the hashes. Because I mean, you have Lamar Jackson, with the running ability. You have Zay Flowers, who's just great in between the numbers. You still Bateman, which is overall a great route runner. He can attack from the middle of the field. I almost said middle of the field. The short game. He can attack outside the numbers, but I think DeAndre Hopkins is better at that. I think for me to be happier about the DeAndre Hopkins signing, the Ravens need to draft a wide receiver. They need to, because for years, I mean, going back to when I was a kid, when the Ravens got Anquan Bolden, that helped them win a Super Bowl because he was a aggressive catch wide receiver. And social media kind of clowns the Ravens as the where wide receivers go to die, which I mean there is some truth to that because had Deshaun Jackson from the Eagles, had Des Bryant from the Cowboys, had Odell Beckham for that one season, which he didn't play bad. He did not. But also had Steve Smith, who produced, that there's another name I'm missing. There's another and Anquan Bolden on that list because Anquan Bolden was older when he got to the Ravens. But Anquan Bolden, Steve Smith, they had great, stints with the Ravens. So I don't want to hear it. I don't. I think that DeAndre Hopkins will be fine. He's not, the number one target for the Ravens. If he was the number one target for the Ravens, that would be concerning. I hope that, with DeAndre Hopkins, he can, also just be used situationally. Like maybe you're going up against a team with like physical corners and DeAndre Hopkins being a physical wide receiver, he can, make those plays that might be a bit harder for Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman to make. And so now moving past my Ravens, we're going to go on to the Bills. So they, I think re-signed Josh Allen, either re-signed or gave him a new deal for 6 years, $330 million, and there was some money he left on the table. And by left on the table, it wasn't that he couldn't get the money. He wanted to give the Bills a discount just because, he's just very loyal to the city of Buffalo. Which, I mean, I understand. They re-signed the defensive end edge rusher, whatever you want to call it, Greg Rousseau, for 4 years, $80 million. And he's a great player. I feel like he wrecks a lot of games, from the defensive side, whether it's, just being a run stuffer or getting to the quarterback. They re-signed Khalil Shakir for 4 years, $60.2 million. Yeah, a great wide receiver in between like the hashes, similar to Zay Flowers in that matter. I still think even though yes, they have Keon Coleman, they have Amari Cooper. Unless Keon Coleman develops, I still think they kind of need that outside the numbers type guy, which Amari Cooper is good at that. Even though he's not as old as DeAndre Hopkins, he is up there. But I think the Bills can still get a few good years out of Amari Cooper. They re-signed the linebacker Terrell Bernard overall, just a great linebacker. The Bills have always had a great, linebacker room. They re-signed Damar Hamlin to a 1 year, $2 million deal. Damar Hamlin, over the past couple of years with the adversity that he's overcome and then him actually playing, he's been a pretty good safety for the past couple of years. So I'm wondering if he balls out this year, will he get a bigger contract? They also brought in Joey Bosa. The 49ers were trying to bring him in, and from what I got to see online, it was almost like a sure thing, but then the Bills swooped in and basically took him away. So, that was a little crazy. Um, moving forward, we're gonna go to the Cowboys. I mean, they didn't really make any crazy moves. Yes, they traded for the old Bills corner Kyer Elam. By old, I mean that's his former team, which a lot of Bills fans did not really seem too happy with him in the same way that the Ravens fans this past season weren't happy with Brandon Stevens. Um, just that, and I believe in the AFC Championship game, Kyer Elam just was not playing well. It's kind of like he just had a bad season, but that's coming from an outside perspective. So, Bills fans, let me know down in the comments your thoughts on that move specifically. And Cowboys also they traded for linebacker Kenneth Murray from the Titans. Um, they re-signed wide receiver slash return specialist Cavante Turpin. He's the best return man in the league today for 3 years, 18 million. They signed Javonte Williams, the old Broncos running back, well, old like the previous running back. Signed Miles Sanders, running back, who's played for the Eagles. He was on the Panthers. And then I believe Dante Fowler used to play for the Cowboys when Dan Quinn was there. Then obviously he went to the Commanders for a year. I believe now he's back with the Cowboys. The Broncos, they've had themselves a great offseason so far. They signed tight end Evan Ingram. Yes, Evan Ingram he can be a little bit injury prone, but last year the Broncos did not really have that identity at tight end. They just did not really have that receiving threat. Their tight ends were more blockers. And so for Bo Nix, who's coming off a great rookie campaign, having that receiving threat at tight end, just that check down security blanket, that's going to be big for them. That will be big. And it's just going to help Bo Nix's game jump to the next level. So they re-signed Jarrett Stidham for 2 years, 12 million. So, kind of have that familiarity in the quarterback room. And then they took two players from the 49ers who I thought were huge producers on the 49ers, Super Bowl teams. By teams, I more so say that, they've had great rosters over the last couple of years. Last year they got hurt, but they signed Talanoa Hufanga for 3 years, 45 million. I believe he's a good safety. I feel like he's kind of good all around. I feel like he's not afraid to tackle, and yet he's decent in coverage. I believe he got hurt. I believe he tore his ACL. The 49ers have had kind of just like an injury bug curse the last few years. And then linebacker Dre Greenlaw, who was quite literally the difference in the Super Bowl when the 49ers played the Chiefs a few years ago. Which, if he didn't get hurt, that game changes dramatically. Um, and that's pretty much it for them. The Lions, yes, they retained some pieces, but I'd say the big thing is they signed cornerback DJ Reed from the Jets, which he is a great corner. I believe he'll fit into that Lions culture just really, really, really well. And so I believe that's a great fit for their scheme. Packers, they signed the guard from the 49ers, Aaron Banks, and they signed cornerback Nate Hobbs. Again, two good moves. Two good moves. Texans, they made some moves this offseason. Some are questionable. They traded Larry Tunsil, which I mean, I'll talk about that more when I go through the Commanders. They traded for Eagles safety CJ Gardner Johnson, which I'll talk about that a little bit more with the Eagles. I'll say I'm surprised, but I think there's more behind the scenes as to why that trade happened. So they traded for wide receiver Christian Kirk, who used to play with the Jaguars, which, I mean, I've seen some people online talk about it's a W for the Jaguars just because Christian Kirk had a bigger contract. They traded for guard Ed Ingram from the Vikings. They re-signed cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. He had a great season this past year. So it's kind of resetting the quarterback market a little bit. 3 years, $90 million. So he's getting about $30 million a year. I don't know his guaranteed money. And they also re-signed edge rusher Derek Barnett, lead to a 1 year, $5 million deal. Again, even though a lot of people are not really happy with the offensive line moves that the Texans had made, at the same time, the Texans, their problem was protecting CJ Stroud and, some of their past quarterbacks. So it's one of those moves where, yeah, it kind of sucks on the surface, but they might be able to, you know, make up for it. But we'll see what they do in the draft. Colts, mostly signing some people. Yes, they retained some people, but they signed 49ers quarterback Chardavius Ward, which, I believe about a year ago now, he had his, incident with his, like, losing his child. Rest in peace. And so I saw some of the press interview where he just, for him, it was mentally draining to play in, San Fran, which, I mean, from my understanding, he loved the team, just, being, in the city. He just reminded him of his daughter, which again, I completely understand that. And, I know his daughter is, watching him, protecting him from above. So I hope Chardavius Ward has a great season. They signed Khalil Herbert, the former Bears running back and Bengal. They signed quarterback Daniel Jones, which, there's going to be some quarterback competition from, Anthony Richardson and, Daniel Jones. I mean, both are first round picks. I think Anthony Richardson was the higher pick. Yeah, I believe he was. But they brought in some competition, which, unless Anthony Richardson, focuses on, kind of some of his mechanics, the short throw, because he's got an arm. He is a freak of an athlete. But he needs to, kind of get some of those mechanics down a little bit better because he's missed some short throws where I'm like, dang, dude. Like, but I think this is good for Anthony Richardson if he rises to the occasion. If he just doesn't put in the work to improve, then that's one thing. But moving on, we are going to talk about the Chiefs. They franchise tagged Trey Smith, which I thought they were going to be able to offer him some money. Maybe they did offer him a contract and I missed it. The only reason I thought they were going to be able to offer him some more money is because they traded Joe Tooney to the Bears. They re-signed Hollywood Brown to a 1 year, $11 million deal. I kind of had a feeling they'd run it back just because Hollywood Brown was injured for pretty much the whole season until the playoffs. They re-signing Kareem Hunt to a 1 year deal. Again, he put in some work for them this past year, so it makes sense. And then bringing back Juju Smith-Schuster for our 1 year deal. Not bad. I think they need to cement that. They did sign a tackle, I believe. I didn't write it down because I. Crazy thing is, the source I was using, I believe I was using, what source was I using? CBS Sports. Which, I mean, I kind of cross-checked it past a few, but I think I saw it through Instagram when I had originally saw it that they signed a left tackle. I don't remember where they got them from. So please let me know in the comments below to maybe make a comment saying like, hey, Chiefs have this guy, to help. Raiders. They've had the most surprising offseason for me, simply just because of this one move I didn't see coming. Trading for Geno Smith. I did not expect that, but I get it that Pete Carroll is the head coach of the Raiders, and so they kind of reunite. I really did not expect it. We'll kind of see what the Raiders do. They might try to draft a wide receiver in the first round because pretty much all Geno Smith has is Brock Bowers. They have Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers, which I mean, not bad options, but I feel like you want to get one other guy on the offense, just one other weapon. They re-signed Max Crosby to a 3 year, $106.5 million deal. Again, great player, impacts the game. I believe he's good at obviously rushing the passer, and he's good in the run game. So great move. Chargers. They re-signed Khalil Mack to a 1 year, $18 million deal, which there was a lot of talk about him going back to the Bears, but he decided to stay with the Chargers. And they also got offensive lineman from the Eagles, Mekhi Becton, for a 2 year, $20 million deal. Mike Williams coming back to the Chargers on a 1 year, $6 million deal. And also Najee Harris, the former Steeler, is going to the Chargers on a 1 year, a $5 million deal. All good moves. It helps improve, kind of what they have. Mike Williams going back gives them a bit more of an outside presence that, they much needed because in a way, I feel like they're like the Ravens, where you had the, in between the hashes type of guy, just not that outside threat. But Mike Williams, if he gets to kind of get back to where he was just a few years ago, I think that'll be all right. For the Rams, they restructured Matt Stafford's contract, freeing up some money and signing Devontae Adams, which my question is, I guess maybe this is just a personal opinion type of question, but Cooper Kupp is about a year younger than Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams, yes, he is great. He is definitely top 5 in the league. Maybe my own personal opinion about Cooper Kupp is in my way of understanding this, but me personally, I see this as like an upgrade, but not like a considerable upgrade because I still think Cooper Kupp is a great wide receiver. Him and Stafford they just played amazing together. Not even just the year that the Rams won the Super Bowl, just following years also. So I don't know. I like the move, but at the same time I don't like the move. Like I don't know how many years you're gonna have Devontae Adams for, and at the same time I don't know how many years you're gonna have Matt Stafford for. So I don't know. It's just kind of a weird gut feeling for me personally. The Jets, one of my favorite signings, signing Justin Fields to a 2-year, $20 million deal. I think it's a great move. I feel like the Steelers should have re-signed Justin Fields. I feel like he would have helped them out a lot. Could have been a potential answer to their quarterback problems. Jets are getting a young guy who has been, improving. His last year at the Bears, I feel like down the stretch he looked really, really good. Overall, he didn't have a bad season that year. With the Steelers in the 6 games, he did what they asked him to do. Got them to a 4-2 record, protected the ball, made big plays down the field. Great. But we will see what he does with the Jets. Because, the Jets, even though they have new coaching, they have a new philosophy, he'll have, I believe he'll have what's in place for him. I think at most he'll just be like one of those like really, really good game managers. Because, hey, I don't think he's going to have to be elite. I think that he's just going to have to not lose them football games, which I understand. Eagles, two big re-signings, contract extensions. They got Zach Bond, who was one of the best linebackers in the league this past year, and he had an interception in the Super Bowl. 3 years, $51 million. Great linebacker. Will have him for many years to come. Extension for Saquon Barkley, the best offensive player in football this past year. 2 years, $41.2 million extension. Great signings. Yes, they lost a lot of pieces, but at the same time on the defense, they're pretty young, and their GM, last few years, he's been making some great draft picks. Like having a lot of great young talent, just having depth. So I'm not as concerned about the Eagles, making a deep playoff run, and I get it. There's still a lot of time until the season starts. We're a good 6 months away, but hey, I think they'll be fine. Steelers traded for wide receiver DK Metcalf. They got 2 crash outs on the same team, but all jokes aside, I like DK Metcalf. A lot of people think he's overrated. I think that he's on the Steelers, and I don't know. I feel like I don't know, different situation. I feel like he'll not be the same kind of crash out type of player he was. Don't get me wrong, he's still an emotional player, which I get it. A lot of players, they play with like they play with their emotions, like they use their emotions as a strength. But I think I think they'll be fine. I think that's a good move for them. They just need that quarterback who can throw DK Metcalf and George Pickens and their other weapons to the ball. They signed cornerback Darius Slay. I wanted him to retire an Eagle, even though that yes, I equally know him as a Detroit Lion and an Eagle, but now he's on the Steelers. So I hope DeAndre Hopkins mosses him a couple of times, but all jokes aside, I think this is a great move for the Steelers just because I still feel like Darius Slay is a good corner. Yes, he's up there in age a little bit, but I feel like he'll still be able to do a lot of good. And then they also brought back Mason Rudolph, which I don't think that's their quarterback of the future. I kind of just think that if they can't get a quarterback that they want, they have somebody that can run their system. Um, Seattle. Seattle, I think, as a team has had I think the Raiders made the most surprising move, but Seattle as a team surprised me the most. Um, Sam Darnold, they signed him to a 3 $100.5 million deal. Only the first year of it is guaranteed. So let's just say he does not have a good season. The Seattle can move on from him and still save a lot of money. So basically, around 30 million of that, maybe a little bit more, is Sam Darnold's money. The rest of that they can move on. Like if he doesn't have a good season, they move on. If there's a quarterback they like next year, they can go after that quarterback. They signed Cooper Kupp to a 3-year, $45 million deal. Great move. So they have Jackson Smith and Jigba. They're going to have him. Just great move all around. And then who knows? Maybe they'll try to get another wide receiver for Sam Darnold. And they also got the Cowboys, DeMarcus Lawrence. Great move. The Bucks, Tampa, made some good moves. They brought back Chris Godwin, 3 years, $66 million deal. I believe he left a lot of money on the table, but he decided to stay with the Buccaneers. Hey, shout out to him because he's a great wide receiver. He's good, outside the numbers, inside the numbers. He's just good all over the field. guard Ben Bredesen, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, had a 3-year, $22 million deal, all give or take. I say give or take because again, I don't know the guaranteed money. Great interior O lineman, did a lot of good things with the Bucks last year, and hey, hopefully they continue to improve. Bringing back who I think is uh if it's not a Hall of Fame or at least a Ring of Honor for the Buccaneers, Levante David, a 1-year, $10 million deal. Great linebacker, great, and just at all aspects of the game, whether it be through, in pass coverage, blitzing, stopping a run, just great linebacker overall. Um, and then lastly, signing edge rusher Son Reddick. Great move. I mean, they had lost Joe Tryon Shoyinka, who I believe was a good, player for the Buccaneers, but getting Hassan Reddick, you kind of fill that void and then some. So I believe that's a good move for them. And then lastly, Washington just really having, two trades. They traded for Deebo Samuel, who they kind of needed that wide receiver to go alongside Scary Terry. Deebo Samuel, he can take a lot of eyes away with he can take the defense's attention on him, which can open up opportunities for Scary Terry, Terry McLaurin. And so I think that's a good move for them. He can do a lot. And then they traded for Larry Tunsil, which that's the one that surprised me because I thought that last year maybe it was their scheme. I thought that last year the Commanders had a pretty good offensive line, and so I didn't really think they needed Larry Tunsil. So I'm not. I think they did lose a lineman in the postseason. I don't remember his name, but I do remember him going down. I think he went down against the Lions, and if that was a tackle, then I understand why they would trade for one. Like I don't know what Larry Tunsil's contract situation is looking like, but if the reason why they traded for Larry Tunsil is because to have that guy for this season, then I get it. But overall, I'd say really the biggest winner. Um, I'd have to say right now, I think that you have to have the Bears in the conversation. I feel like you have to have the Broncos in the conversation. Another team, I feel like right now I can't say Seattle's a winner. I'm saying they could be a winner. It depends on how their season goes. So I'm gonna say the Bears and Broncos right now. I think the moves that they've made are the most helpful for their teams in the situations that they are in, and we will kind of see. My Ravens, I wouldn't say they made they're in a bad situation with the moves that they made. The biggest loser, I kind of have to say the 49ers, but at the same time, I understand why they let go of so many people. It's because Brock Purdy is probably going to get a crazy payday in the near future. It just sucks that they've had to get rid of who I think were a lot of good pieces for them, but we will see. We will see. And the draft's coming up in about a month, so I will try my best to talk about the draft. Basically when round one happens that same night, I will record, put it out early in the morning, and then rinse and repeat for the second and third round. I'm not going to do it for all the rounds of the draft. But I just want to thank you all for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.